Adelia used to think love was forever. She used to believe in the magic of growing old together. When she married John, she thought she had won the greatest prize in life. He was charming, successful, and always knew how to make her laugh. Their little house in the suburbs felt like a piece of heaven. Morning coffees on the balcony, weekend hikes, and movie nights, wrapped in each other's arms. It was all real. It was everything she ever dreamed of. Adelia supported John through thick and thin. She was there when he lost his job and helped him build his business from scratch. She cooked, cleaned, and even gave up her career as a fashion designer to focus on their marriage. She believed in building something together, and John always said he appreciated her sacrifices. He used to kiss her forehead and whisper that he was the luckiest man alive. But life is not always what it seems. Sometimes the people who smile the most are hiding the deepest cracks. It started small. John would come home late. He said he was busy with meetings, clients' deadlines. Adelia believed him. She always trusted him. Then one day she noticed something strange. John flinched when she touched his arm. He pulled away during their usual cuddle sessions. When they shared a bed, he would sleep facing the wall. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The man who once could not keep his hands off her now treated her like a stranger. At first she blamed herself. Maybe I gained a little weight. Maybe I am too tired, too distracted, too boring. She tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, wore lingerie-lit candles around the room. But nothing worked. John remained distant. Then came the night that shattered her world. They were having dinner. She wore a red dress he used to love. She had curled her hair, put on perfume, even baked his favorite cheesecake. But John looked at her like she was invisible. Not a word of compliment. Not a glance of desire. "Are you even attracted to me anymore?" she asked, trying to hide the tremble in her voice. John stared at his plate for a long time. Then he put down his fork and looked at her with cold, empty eyes. "Adelia, you are not the woman I married. You used to be exciting, beautiful, confident. Now you are just plain. I am sorry, but you are no longer attractive to me." Her heart stopped. The words hit harder than a slap. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw the cheesecake at his face. But she just sat there frozen. For the rest of the dinner, they sat in silence. The ticking of the clock was louder than any words. That night, Adelia did not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their life together, trying to find the exact second when love turned into contempt. The next morning, John left early. He did not kiss her goodbye. Adelia found herself wandering around the house. Every corner held memories, but now they felt like knives piercing her skin. Then came the message. A neighbor accidentally sent her a photo, meant for someone else. It was John at a cafe with a young girl. She wore a school uniform. She was sitting on his lap. They were laughing like teenagers. Adelia could not breathe. It all made sense now. The late nights, the cold bed, the cruel words. He had found someone else, a girl young enough to be his daughter, and he used Adelia's age as an excuse to justify his betrayal. She locked herself in the bathroom and sobbed. For hours she cried until there were no tears left. But something changed inside her that day. A fire began to burn. A voice whispered from deep within. "You gave him everything, and he threw it away. You are not the problem. He is." That was the moment Adelia decided she would never let herself be broken again. She wiped her tears, looked into the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, she saw a woman worth fighting for. Adelia stood in front of her closet, staring at the faded clothes she had not worn in years. The long skirts, the oversized sweaters, the dull colors, all chosen to please John. He always said real women did not need to dress like models. He liked her plain, but now she saw the truth. He never wanted her to shine. She opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a dusty sketchbook. It was filled with her old designs, gowns, heels, accessories all drawn with passion. She had let go of her dream for him. Now it was time to claim it back. The next morning, she enrolled in a local fitness center. She hired a trainer and told him one thing: I want to become unforgettable. Each day she pushed herself, running, lifting, boxing. Her muscles screamed, her feet ached, but she kept going. With every drop of sweat, she shed the past. With every sore muscle, she built her future. She changed her diet, learned skincare routines, practiced makeup. The woman who once cried herself to sleep now woke up at 5 in the morning and conquered her day. She was transforming, not for John, not for revenge, but for herself. Then came the next step. She applied to a modeling agency. The receptionist looked her up and down and said, "We usually work with younger faces." Adelia smiled. "Let me show you what real beauty looks like." She walked the test runway with confidence and fire. Every step told a story of pain, of survival, of rebirth. The agency signed her the same day. Soon she was doing shoots for magazines, skincare brands, and high fashion. Her face was on billboards across the city. People whispered when she walked into rooms. Who is she? Where has she been hiding? Men turned heads. Women took notes. She became a sensation, not just for her looks, but for her grace, her strength, her comeback. One afternoon, after a shoot, she passed by her old neighborhood. She saw John in the distance. He was getting out of his car, and he was not alone. The schoolgirl was with him. This time she was yelling. She threw something at him. "A purse," he shouted back. People stared. It was a scene from a tragic soap opera. Adelia stayed inside her car, watching from behind her sunglasses. John looked different, older, tired, wrinkled. The spark he once had was gone. The charm, the pride, all faded. She smiled and drove away. She no longer felt pain, only clarity. The man who said she was no longer attractive was now being humiliated in public by the child he replaced her with. Poetic justice. But Adelia knew she was only halfway through her journey. There was still more to become, more to build, more to conquer. This was not just about a man who betrayed her. It was about reclaiming a life stolen by years of silence, sacrifice, and suppression. She would not stop, not until she reached the top, and the world would know that a woman who rises from betrayal is the most powerful woman of all. Adelia sat in the back seat of a sleek black car, staring out at the glowing skyline. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Agencies, invitations, interviews. Everyone wanted a piece of her, but she stayed grounded. Fame was never her goal. Freedom was. One afternoon, she received an offer to walk in a Paris Fashion Week event. It was one of the biggest opportunities of her career, and she took it without hesitation. The flight to France felt like a dream. She looked out the window and whispered to herself, "I am not who I was." Backstage at the venue, the atmosphere was electric. Models hurried, makeup artists dabbed at faces. Photographers clicked away, but Adelia stood calm and composed in a corner. She was older than most of the models there, but she carried herself with a dignity that made her unforgettable. When she stepped onto the runway, the room hushed. She wore a silver gown that shimmered with every step. Her eyes were fierce, her presence magnetic. The crowd erupted in applause before she even reached the end. After the show, a famous designer approached her. He complimented her not just for her walk, but for her soul. "There is something rare about you," he said. "Something real. The world is craving real." Her face appeared in international magazines. Articles praised her elegance, her resilience, her story. But what truly made her heart soar was not the fame. It was the messages from women around the world. "You gave me hope. You made me believe again. You reminded me that I am worth it." She spent evenings replying to them, encouraging them, telling them that healing was not linear, but always possible. One day she received a message she never expected. It was from an old friend. He wrote, "Adelia, I saw your face on a billboard in Times Square. Is that really you? You look incredible. Proud of you." She smiled. He was one of the few who stayed by her side during the hardest days. She replied with warmth and gratitude. Meanwhile, John was struggling. The business they built together was crumbling. The schoolgirl had left him after finding someone closer to her age and with more money. John now lived alone in a small rented apartment. His reputation was damaged. His finances were a mess. He saw Adelia on TV one night. He dropped the remote in shock. It was her, radiant, glowing, loved. He sat there in the dark, staring, regretting. The woman he once called unattractive was now desired by millions. He reached for his phone, typed her name into social media, scrolled through photo after photo, each one more stunning than the last. Then he saw it. A picture of her laughing with a man in a suit. Tall, handsome, powerful. He felt a stab in his chest. He clicked on the caption. Rumors of romance between supermodel Adelia and tech tycoon Raphael continue to grow. John threw the phone across the room. He realized then what he had truly lost. Not just a wife, but a queen. Adelia walked through the marble lobby of a luxury hotel in Milan. Her heels clicked against the polished floor like a soft drumbeat of victory. Every eye turned as she passed, not because of her fame, but because of the energy she carried. She was elegance reborn, strength wrapped in beauty. She was there to meet Raphael, the billionaire tech entrepreneur who had been quietly pursuing her for months. He was unlike any man she had met. Polite, respectful, intelligent, and never once did he make her feel less than. They met over coffee after one of her shoots. What began as small talk about photography turned into deep conversations about life, pain, healing, and ambition. Raphael admired her, not for her looks, but for her story. "You are like fire," he told her, "not because you burn, but because you light up everything around you." They traveled together, from Tokyo to Santorini. She laughed again, a real laugh. Not the polite kind she used to give John to avoid conflict, but the kind that came from the soul. She was learning to love again, but this time she was not losing herself in the process. Meanwhile, John was spiraling. He had tried to date again, but none of the relationships lasted. His charm had faded. The young women he chased mocked him behind his back. He overheard them once at a bar. "That guy is so desperate. Isn't he the one who cheated on his wife with a teenager?" The words haunted him. He missed Adelia more than he thought possible. He missed her warmth, her voice in the morning, the way she used to make his tea just right. He missed being admired, being respected, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not get her out of his head. He followed her career obsessively, read every article, watched every interview, and then he did something pathetic. He created a fake account and messaged her, "You are beautiful. You always were. I am sorry for everything." But she never replied. Adelia had read the message. She recognized the tone, the desperation masked as admiration. She smiled gently, not with cruelty, but with closure. She had cried for nights hoping for an apology. Now that she had it, it meant nothing. The past no longer had power over her. One evening, while watching the sunset with Raphael, she told him everything. About John, the betrayal, the pain, the shame. Raphael held her hand and listened without judgment. Then he said something she would never forget. "The people who break us do not deserve to rebuild us. You rebuilt yourself, Adelia. That makes you unstoppable." His words sank deep. She had come full circle, from a woman abandoned and broken to a woman admired and loved, and it was just the beginning. It was the night of a grand charity gala in New York. The event was hosted by a global fashion house and attended by celebrities, designers, CEOs, and royals. Adelia was the guest of honor, not just as a model, but as a symbol of empowerment. She wore an emerald gown that hugged her figure perfectly, the kind of dress that turned heads before she even entered a room. Paparazzi lights flashed in every direction as she stepped onto the red carpet. Her confidence was not just seen, it was felt. Inside the ballroom, she gave a short speech. She spoke about second chances, about finding strength in pain, about not letting anyone else define your worth. People stood in ovation, some with tears in their eyes. That night, she raised millions for a foundation that helped women rebuild their lives after abuse and betrayal. It was more than success. It was purpose. After the event, Raphael took her hand and led her to the balcony. Below them, the city lights shimmered like stars, scattered across the earth. He looked into her eyes and said, "This world is better with you in it. Let me be the man who reminds you of that every single day." She did not need saving, but it felt beautiful to be seen. Back in his apartment that night, they talked for hours, not about work or fame, but about what made them feel alive. Raphael opened up about his past, his parents, his failures, his fears. Adelia listened, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar: safety. Meanwhile, John sat alone in his apartment. His walls, once filled with pictures, were now bare. His business partners had pulled out after scandals surfaced. Clients left. The media labeled him as unprofessional and unstable. The girl he cheated with had moved abroad and blocked him. She had posted a story with her new boyfriend, a college athlete, young, strong, carefree. John opened his fridge. Empty. He ate instant noodles. He drank cheap wine. He scrolled through photos of Adelia, trying to convince himself that he did not care. But the truth screamed louder than his silence. He had traded gold for dust. He decided to do something foolish. He showed up at one of Adelia's meet and greet events. Security stopped him at the entrance. But he insisted, "Tell her it is John. She will want to see me." They relayed the message to her backstage. For a moment, she stared at the name. A name that once made her heart race. Now it barely stirred a thought. She told the guard, "Thank him for coming, but I have nothing to say." That night she slept peacefully, no nightmares, no anger, just peace, because real revenge is healing so beautifully that the person who broke you can no longer recognize who you have become. Adelia sat by the window of her penthouse in Monaco, watching the sea melt into the sky. The wind danced through her hair as she sipped her coffee. It had been 2 years since she walked away from her old life, the life where she begged for love, where she questioned her worth. That woman was gone. Now her mornings began with sunrise yoga and ended with laughter. She was designing again, her own fashion line, each piece inspired by her journey, named after feelings she once buried: courage, freedom, rebirth. Her designs became a global hit, worn by A-list actresses and real women who felt seen through her work. She poured her pain into art, her heartbreak into beauty, and the world embraced it. Raphael supported her without ever overshadowing her. He never tried to control her shine. He simply stood beside her, proud. They attended events together, but he never introduced her as his girlfriend. He always said, "This is Adelia, a force of nature." Behind closed doors, he made her feel cherished, listened to, protected, but never possessed. One evening, he surprised her with a quiet dinner on a yacht. No cameras, no flashing lights, just candles, waves, and music. He held her hand as the boat rocked gently with the tide. "You were born to rise," he told her, "but I hope I can rise beside you." She smiled and leaned into his chest. For once, her heart did not flinch. It did not worry about being too much or not enough. Back in the city, John was jobless and bitter. He had applied for dozens of roles, but his name was tainted. No one wanted to work with a man known for scandals and disrespect. The online forums that once celebrated him now laughed at his downfall. He read the comments under Adelia's new photos. "Goddess," "icon," "how did anyone let her go?" Each word felt like a dagger. He remembered the way she used to look at him, with trust, with love, with everything, and he threw it away for a moment of thrill. A child who made him feel young, but offered nothing beyond empty validation. He went through their old photos, vacations, birthdays, quiet nights on the couch. He realized too late that Adelia was the only real thing he ever had. But by the time truth arrived, she had already healed. She did not hate him. She pitied him. The girl he said was no longer attractive had become the woman the world admired, and John was a faded chapter in a book no one wanted to read again. The day of Adelia's fashion line launch. In Milan arrived with thunder and flashing lights. Reporters flooded the venue. The world was watching. Everyone wanted to see the woman who had transformed pain into power. Adelia stood backstage in a sleek black suit, her hair tied back, her eyes focused. Models lined up, wearing her creations each piece, telling a story of resilience and rebirth. As the music began and the first model stepped onto the runway, Adelia felt a rush of emotion, not nerves, not fear, but pride. This was her, all of it, stitched from broken promises, shaped by silent nights of crying into pillows, colored by the fire that had burned inside her for so long. When the show ended, the crowd erupted. Designers rose from their seats. Celebrities clapped with genuine admiration. Even critics stood silent, moved. She walked out for her bow, but the applause felt like a whisper compared to the voice inside her, saying, "You made it." That night she attended the after-party, hosted in an old castle, turned into a luxury venue. Raphael stayed by her side, but never in front of her spotlight. People surrounded her, offered partnerships, begged for interviews, praised her beauty, her elegance, her strength. She smiled, thanked them, but never forgot who she was before all this. The woman who stood alone in the bathroom, shaking after hearing she was no longer attractive. That memory would never vanish. It was her anchor, her fuel. Across the world, John sat in a rented room with flickering lights and unpaid bills. He watched the live stream of her show. He saw the cameras flash, the audience cheer, the elegance in her step, the confidence in her voice during interviews. She had become untouchable. He tried to tell himself it was makeup, or styling, or money, but deep down he knew the truth. Her glow came from within, from rising after being shattered. He whispered to the screen, "I am sorry, Adelia. I was wrong." But she would never hear it. And even if she did, she would not care. Adelia was far beyond apologies, far beyond the man who tried to shrink her light to feed his own ego. She had built an empire on the ruins he left behind, and it stood taller than anything he ever dared to dream. The invitations arrived in gold-embossed envelopes. Adelia and Raphael were getting married. It was not a grand announcement blasted across headlines. It was quiet, elegant, and deeply personal. Just like their love, they chose a private island in Greece, surrounded by the sea sky, and only those who truly mattered. No media, no paparazzi. Only peace. Adelia stood in front of the mirror on the morning of her wedding. Her gown was simple, yet breathtaking. Designed by her own hands, lace kissed her shoulders, and the silk flowed like liquid light. She looked into her own eyes, not searching for beauty, but honoring the journey. This woman, this bride, had once been discarded like a faded dress. Now she stood tall, chosen, cherished, adored. As she walked down the aisle, every step echoed her story. From betrayal to redemption, from broken to whole, Raphael stood waiting with a soft smile. He held no promises of perfection, only of presence. They exchanged vows, written from the heart, not poetry, but truth. I will never dim your fire. I will never fear your strength. I will grow beside you, not behind you. When they kissed, the wind swirled around them, as if the universe itself was celebrating. Back in the city, John heard about the wedding through a tabloid. He stared at the photo of Adelia in her gown, radiant, complete. He had imagined this moment differently. He thought she would one day come back, maybe when she missed the comfort of familiarity, or when life got too hard. But she never did. She had rewritten her life without needing to borrow a single page from his. John was alone in a bar. The bartender barely acknowledged him. A young couple beside him laughed. Their happiness stabbed deeper than silence. He remembered how Adelia used to laugh, soft and real, and how he crushed it under his pride. He walked home through the cold. No messages, no invitations, no future, just a man haunted by what he let go. Meanwhile, Adelia danced barefoot under the stars, her husband spinning her in circles, the guests cheering, the waves applauding. It was not revenge, it was freedom, because her life was never about proving him wrong. It was about proving to herself that she was always enough. Months passed after the wedding, and Adelia's world only grew brighter. Her fashion line expanded into fragrances and accessories. Each launch broke records. Magazines called her the woman who turned scars into silk. She became not just a brand, but a symbol. She started a foundation to support women, rebuilding their lives after emotional and financial abandonment. She traveled across continents, speaking in forums, universities, and global summits, not about fashion, but about rising. Everywhere she went, people listened, because her story was not filtered or scripted. It was raw and real. One afternoon in New York, she was invited to speak at a televised panel about self-worth. She entered the stage in a tailored white suit. Her voice calm, her words sharp. They asked about heartbreak, about betrayal. She paused for a moment, then said, "Sometimes people leave you because they see your light and fear. They will never match it. Let them leave. Let them run. And then rebuild yourself so brightly that even their shadow cannot touch you again." The crowd rose in applause. The clip went viral within hours. Somewhere across the city, John saw the video. He sat in a worn-out jacket in a cramped apartment. The paint on the wall was peeling. His savings were gone. His name was forgotten. But Adelia, she was on every screen, in every store, on every cover. He turned off the phone, stared at the wall, and let silence remind him of what pride had cost him. He thought about sending another message, just to say sorry again, just to feel like he still existed in her world. But deep down he knew he was no longer a chapter, not even a sentence, just a footnote in a story far greater than his imagination. Meanwhile, Raphael and Adelia walked through a vineyard in Italy. They talked about their future, children, travel, legacy. He looked at her and said, "The world admires you, but I get to love you, and that will always be my greatest privilege." She smiled, not because of the compliment, but because she finally believed it. She was loved, not for what she endured, but for who she became. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting golden light across the hills of Tuscany. Adelia stood on the balcony of her villa, overlooking the vineyards, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The air was still the world quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but the peace of a soul no longer at war with itself. Behind her inside the villa, Raphael played soft piano tunes, a melody he composed just for her. Each note was a thank you, each pause a vow. Adelia breathed deeply. She had everything she needed, not because life was perfect, but because she had finally stopped chasing validation from those who never deserved her. She thought briefly of the woman she used to be, the one who waited for love to be returned, the one who believed she had to shrink to be accepted. That woman no longer lived here. In her place stood a woman who chose herself, who chose joy, purpose, power. Her phone buzzed, a message from her assistant. A famous international publisher wanted to release her memoir. They wanted the world to hear her story, all of it. She smiled and typed her reply. "I already wrote it. With every step I took away from pain, With every word I refused to speak in regret. With every dream I chased for myself. She walked back inside. Raphael looked up and opened his arms. She walked into them with ease. Later that evening, they had dinner under fairy lights, surrounded by laughter and love. No cameras, no performance, just truth. Meanwhile, John passed by a bookstore downtown. A huge poster of Adelia stood in the window. She was the face of a campaign for women reclaiming their identity after betrayal. He stopped and stared, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with an ache that would never leave. The woman he once discarded had become everything he told her she would never be. And he had become everything she feared she would become if she stayed. Irrelevant. He turned away, walked into the night, alone, unknown. And Adelia, she danced under the stars that night with the man who never doubted her shine. Because in the end, her revenge was never destruction. It was becoming untouchably whole.